law. And one of the most revered and respected figures of Islam, who was the fourth Khalifa, he loses a case against a Jewish citizen because the judge refused to accept the testimony of his son. This was the justice system there, which laid the foundation of this great civilization. So what does it show? Number one, that minorities were equal citizens. They were equal citizens in front of law. There was no discrimination. Secondly, it shows that a common citizen could win a case against the head of state. No one was above law. This is 600 years before the Magna Carta was signed in England, which was the beginning of the democratic struggle of Britain. And it took them years before they could actually bring their head of state under the rule of law. This is what happened in the state of Medina. It was ahead of its time. And then it was the first welfare state in the history of mankind. Compassion, humanity. It was a state which took care of its weak, its orphans, its widows, its poor people. It was the first time pensions were introduced in the state of Medina. They took care of the old people. A compassionate state. A state where they wanted to please the Almighty. How do you please the Almighty Allah? By looking after His human beings, especially the weak. This is what happened in the state of Medina. And today, I feel sad whenever I go to Scandinavia. I see what a welfare state should be in all over the Muslim world. Look at humanity there. Look at the way they look after the weak. In fact, sometimes I'm sad because they look after the animals better than some of us look after our human beings. And remember, He's Rahmatullah Alameen, so whoever listened to His message, whichever human community will prosper. It doesn't matter because for all humanity, He brought the message of mercy. If you look at Switzerland, in the rule of law index, Switzerland is 99%. 99%. So with hardly any resources, it is one of the most prosperous countries in the world. So as I said, anyone who goes by the model of Medina will prosper. And then, quest for knowledge. Foreign Minister Wang Yi, you'll be surprised, one of our prophets saying, he said, even if you have to go to China to learn and quest for knowledge, you must go there. Now, first China at that time was center of knowledge, but it meant even risking your life. Going from, at that time, Arabia to China meant you might not come back. So that was the quest of knowledge. You have to seek knowledge from cradle to grave. He sparked off this great knowledge revolution. For hundreds of years, the top scientists were Muslims because they thought quest for knowledge was a sacred duty. Look at the situation in the Muslim world today. How much do we have a quest for knowledge? And then we get so much, wherever you go, Muslims we imprison our women have no rights. And sometimes, it almost seemed that the US invaded Afghanistan to liberate their women. There was no other reason except to liberate their women. Somehow our women are in prison. Let me just tell you that it was a revolutionary move by our Prophet that women were given inheritance rights. They were empowered. In Europe, even 100 years ago, the women barely got their inheritance rights. 1,500 years ago, women were given their rights. And no one seems to know this. And sadly, Cultural issues are equated to our religion. We cannot explain, sometimes Western people say, they confuse culture with religion. I'm sad to say in Pakistan, we discovered 70% of our women do not get inheritance rights. So we have especially had to pass law to enforce that women must get their inheritance rights. This is 1500 years later. And no one knows this. Slaves, honorable foreign ministers, nowhere in human history has this happened. That slaves became kings. The Mamluks were slaves who became kings in Egypt. In India, there was slave dynasty, they became kings. Why? Because the Prophet said, treat your slaves as family members. Best to free them, if not, treat them as equal family members. So he was the greatest human being that ever stepped foot. There'll never be a human being like them. Anyone close to the Prophet became leaders. If you read the book, The Arab Conquest, everyone became a leader, whoever was near the Prophet. And our generations don't understand that, and neither have we been able to explain to anyone else. Let's not confuse Muslim imperialism with the 10 years of Prophet in Medina. Let's not confuse that, because that was not what the Prophet preached, where the Muslims went all over the world conquering. It is not what the Prophet's, the whole revolution was of ideas. Honorable foreign ministers, one of the ideas of OIC is to protect Islamic values. So now I will say something which is completely different. I believe that Islamic values never have been so much under threat as they are right now. And I bring this to this August assembly because when I became the Prime Minister, I asked the police chief, asked him what the crime chart. I was amazed to note that sex crime, child abuse and rape is the fastest growing crime in this country. So we did further investigation. We discovered that the mobile phone, the sort of pornographic material available on the mobile phone to children, this has never happened in human history. So the material available is causing havoc in our society without us knowing. Parents don't know what's happening when the child goes into his room or something. They don't know what he's watching on his mobile phone. It is very important that this August forum, we should plan how to combat this, because it is already having a huge impact. We have a rise in divorces. We all know that the more vulgarity, the more a society gets permissive, it has a direct impact on the family system. One of the most important things about Islam is that our religion protects the family system. We have values like we respect parents, we have respect for our teachers, but the culture that is coming through, social media, we really need to think carefully, how are we going to protect our generations? I have formed in Pakistan a Rahmatul Alameen authority of scholars. The whole purpose is how are we going to give an alternate point of view to our children, cartoons. How do we, because children get influenced from that age onwards. How do we strengthen our children against this unpredictable social media revolution? How do we know where it is going? So I think that I thought at this meeting I should mention, because we need to start thinking about alternate media, how we can combat. You can't stop social media, but we can give our children, fortify them, strengthen them ethically and morally. Now I come to two important political issues. One is Palestine and the other is Kashmir. Honorable foreign ministers, we have failed both the Palestinians and the people of Kashmir. I'm sad to say that we have been able to make no impact at all. They don't take us seriously. We are a divided house, and those powers know it. We are 1.5 billion people, and yet our voice to stop this blatant injustice is insignificant. We are not talking about conquering some country. We are simply talking about the human rights of the people of Kashmir and Palestine, the international law, which is on their side, United Nations Security Council resolutions that back their right. In Kashmir, the international community promised them the right to decide their own destiny through a plebiscite. That right was never given to them. In fact, this special status of Kashmir was taken away illegally by India on 5th August 2019. Nothing happened because they feel no pressure. They feel we can make a resolution and then, back to our usual business. I'm not talking about altering our foreign policies. All of us countries have our different foreign policies. But on core issues, I'm asking the OIC that unless we have a united front, we will keep these abuses will happen. Like in Palestine, it's daylight robbery going on in Palestine. The only hope I have is now because of social media, first time in Western countries, there's awareness of what's going on to the poor Palestinians. That is so far much more than the OIC. It's the mobile phone and the spread of information of the injustices being done to the Palestinians. That is the best, at the moment, the best way to protect them, not us. In Kashmir, it's a war crime, according to the 4th Geneva Convention, to change the demography of an occupied land. India is changing the demography of Kashmir by making the Muslims from a majority to a minority, by bringing in settlers from outside. This is a war crime. Yet no one has pushed about it. Neither India has pushed nor Israel, because they think we are ineffective. So, Honorable Foreign Ministers, let me just say that the way the world is headed, I'm afraid it's headed the wrong way. There's a Cold War almost started. There is a chance of world being divided into blocks. We 1.5 billion people, unless we are united, unless we take a united stand, we'll be nowhere. As what I'm scared to say where the future is headed right now. Before I come to Ukraine, I just want to talk about Afghanistan. It is extremely important that we stabilize Afghanistan. After 40 years, and no nation has suffered as the people of Afghanistan. 40 years of conflict. Finally, there is no conflict going on. The only danger now to Afghanistan is that through the sanctions and non-recognition, they might end up having a humanitarian crisis. Already the people are falling below the poverty line. Already there's a brain drain going on. So it's extremely important that we help the people of Afghanistan. And I say this because a stable Afghanistan is the only way, I repeat, it's the only way we are going to be able to stop international terrorism from Afghan soil. No other country is going to be able to do it. Let's not be delusional that some other country will come in and sort of through drones or something fight terrorism. It's not going to happen. The only hope is a stable Afghanistan government that can take care of international terrorism. I want to add a word of caution. Anyone who knows the Afghan character should be cautioned that please do not push the people of Afghanistan to do things where they feel that their sovereignty is being threatened. They are very proud, independent-minded people. They have always fought for their sovereignty for hundreds of years. They do not like the idea that someone is dictating to them. So I would caution that let's help them, let's encourage them, let's get them involved in the international community. And I believe that the people of Afghanistan are strong enough to evolve. The Afghan character does not like outside interference. And finally, I come to Ukraine. I'm, like I think everyone here and the rest of the world, we're all worried about what's going on there. May I suggest that the OIC, during its discussions, the foreign ministers, we should think about how we, represent 1.5 billion people, how we can mediate, how we can bring about a ceasefire, how we can try and put an end to the conflict. I'm going to meet His Excellency Wang Yi after this, and I want to discuss how maybe OIC, along with China, how we can all step in and try to stop this conflict, which is going to have, if it keeps going the way it is, it will have great consequences for the rest of the world. I have already, as the head of the government here, I can tell you that we are already suffering. Oil prices have gone up, gas prices have shot up, wheat prices have gone up because of this war. And if this keeps continuing, this is only going to get worse. So therefore, we should, all the countries which are non-partisan, we are in a special position to be able to influence this conflict. So as I said, I would want the foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, please discuss with the other foreign ministers, and I will discuss with His Excellency, the Chinese foreign minister, how we can all, as a bloc, OIC and China, how we can influence the events in Ukraine and stop this and have some ceasefire and resolve this conflict. Lastly, honorable foreign ministers, let me again say what a pleasure it was to welcome you to my beautiful country. I want to end by saying, again I repeat, that the world is moving in a direction which is sadly worrisome for all of us. In bloc politics, in Cold War, and let's just 1.5 billion people we keep underestimating the strength we have. Somehow we lack self-belief. As a sportsman, I can tell you that a team that has self-belief will defeat a team that is far more talented but doesn't have self-belief. We don't have self-belief. We somehow look to others to help us and get justice. But as where the world is headed, it is extremely important that we get united and on certain core issues take a stand. And let's not be dragged into this, into blocks, into the conflicts. We should stay as a bloc and show our power in bringing about peace rather than becoming part of some conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for gracing the session and enlightening us with your words of wisdom. I'm confident that your thought-provoking address will guide the deliberations of this 48th session for the next 2 days. Excellencies, we take a break for lunch and prayers. Since the inaugural session took much more time than expected, we will now reconvene at 3:15. The next segment would be off-camera, open only to the members and observer states.
Viewers, you're watching live transmission from the Parliament House, where several of the foreign ministers who were present here, the OIC member states, they came and they shared their comments. And in the end, we also saw Prime Minister Imran Khan giving his keynote address to the OIC Foreign Ministers Conference. And definitely, this is a huge step for Pakistan, a historic day for Pakistan. A lot of initiatives have been taken by Pakistan, and the position of Pakistan, important position, significant position that Pakistan has now in the Committee of Nations as far as the Islamic states are concerned, is quite significant and important. Of course, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi was also there, and he has become the chair.
Refugees, the Rohingyas, to their original homeland. We register our support for judicial action with the International Court of Justice, for the recovering of listenings in support of the Rohingyas, to put an end to all the forms of violence against them. I should like on this occasion to pay a special tribute to Gambia, to the Republic of Gambia, for their frontland role in support of the affairs and the meeting of the committee today against the violation of human rights against the Rohingyas would allow us to find a solution and to face up to the offensive in this regard. Honorable participants, according to the official reports of the Observatory of Islamophobia in the OIC, the reputation of the Muslim community in a number of countries is subject to defamation at a time when action is increasing against Muslims due to the rise of extreme right. All Islamic states are called upon to act together against such a situation and take necessary measures to fight against racist and xenophobic actions at all levels and to establish pillars of security and peace. In this regard, we dare rely on the member states to act together with the General Secretariat against Islamophobia. On the other hand, we need to collaborate with all the members of the international community to combat this phenomenon. It is with satisfaction that we have welcomed the adoption in 15th March by the General Assembly of the United Nations of a resolution designating the 15th of March of each year as International Day of the fight against Islamophobia. We express the hope that it will contribute to favor a dialogue at the international level of a culture of tolerance and peace. Our fight against terrorism is also an absolute priority for our organization. In order to face up to this phenomenon, we have established a multidimensional strategy on the basis of international law and the Convention of the OIC on Anti-Terrorism Act, including the question, one of the issues to which we attach special attention. I would like to draw attention to strengthening cooperation between the member states in culture and civilization. This is a subject of consultations that the General Secretariat is undertaking with the member states and international and regional bodies that partners in this field. And this is the object of active action in this regard. I would like to avail of the opportunity to congratulate the UAE for having hosted the exhibition 2022, which has been the subject of consistent cooperation between the member states. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the field of social development and protection of values and regarding the institution of marriage and family, the General Secretariat is getting ready to convene other meetings of experts to achieve the discussion of the project of Convention of the OIC on the rights of children in Islam, a project that was elaborated with the Permanent Commission and Independent Commission of Human Rights, IPHCR. With regard to the freedom of women and empowering women, I would like to hail the Republic of the Arab Republic of Egypt, the host country of the Organization for the Right of Women, for having allocated a special building to headquarter to host the organization. At the level of the capacity building of youth, I would like to pay special tribute to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for having decided to welcome and host the 5th session of the Islamic Conference of Ministers of Youth and Sports that was regrettably delayed due to the COVID-19. This General Secretariat continues its coordination with the Saudi authorities with regard to set a special date for the said conference. In terms of the media, the organization have sped up its investments in new media to enlighten the member states and the public international public opinion regarding the vital issues for the Islamic Ummah and for the Muslim communities in non-member states, as well as to educate the world about its projects and efforts in support of the least developed countries to face up to the propagation of the coronavirus pandemic. In the humanitarian field, the OIC General Secretariat services have been developed further over the past few years in collaboration with the international bodies. In this regard, I would like to thank all the member states and institutions of the OIC that have contributed to supporting humanitarian action of our organization, particularly the Islamic Solidarity Fund and the humanitarian partners, for most of which I would like to quote the King Salman Center for Humanitarian Action. The General Secretariat has put in enormous efforts to help the member states, the least developed countries, to face up to the pandemic of the coronavirus, adopted multiple initiatives in this regard, including the opening of a special fund for the reception of accounts of contributions in support of the World Health Organization. In this regard, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has made a 20 million real donation in support of this fund for the acquisition of vaccines in coordination with the Salman Center for Humanitarian Action. I wish to avail of the occasion to launch an appeal to the member states to contribute further to this account to finance the purchase of vaccines for the benefit of the least developed countries in the OIC. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 2 years have passed by, and we have not yet been able to get out of the COVID pandemic. Due to this pandemic, measures taken during this period, our countries have faced economic difficulties and a drop of exportations of tourist activities. Based on this fact, the post-corona action occupies a special place in our action. In this regard, our organization has paid particular action for the implementation of these programs and economic projects in agriculture, in rural development, food security, employment and protection, social protection, and strengthening exchanges in trade and encouragement of investment in order to ensure the realization of the objectives as announced in our action program OIC 2025. Bearing in mind the importance of cooperation in the economic and trade fields between the member states and within the framework of the implementation of the resolutions issued by your council to organize a forum on investment in Africa, I've accorded particular attention to this issue, and I'm about to finalize the details of which I will inform you in due time. I'm happy to inform you also that the 8th session of the Islamic Conference of the OIC on food security and agricultural development held in Istanbul in the Republic of Turkey on 25th to 27th October 2021 has given a new impetus to cooperation in the sector. The ministers have adopted 3 programs of the OIC for agricultural development and strategies such as food stocks and rice and other products. Within the same framework, the OIC Tourist Conference and Labor conference that will be held this year, respectively in Azerbaijan and the UAE, will allow the member states of our organization to take stock of the current situation in this particular sector and to elaborate a common strategy such as to enable us to face up to the challenges and alleviate the adverse effects of the coronavirus on the sectors of tourism and labor. Excellencies, Highnesses, the OIC has intensified its action in favor of strengthening cooperation between the member states in order to ensure the progress of its agenda in the field of science, technology, higher education, health, water and environment as fundamental pillars of the strategy of the OIC for the eradication of poverty, of disease, illiteracy and extremism. I'm happy therefore to recall that the second summit of the OIC on technology that was held online in June last has taken stock of the steps fulfilled by the member states in the field of technology and their policies and national strategy in this field. Therefore, undoubtedly, providing a high-quality level of education will be the optimal means against underdevelopment. The OIC plays an important role in the training of students of the member states. Allow me here to express my due thanks and gratitude to all the member states and organizations that give financial support to our universities, in consecration of greater solidarity and cooperation among the member states in the field of higher education, of programs of exchange in the member states to provide larger numbers of scholarships for the students, particularly in the least developed countries. In the field of health, the General Secretariat, in collaboration with the competent, relevant organizations of the OIC, has adopted a traditionally well-approved approach to help the member states face up to the adverse effects of the COVID-19 with the help of the steering committee on health, of ministers of health, as well as the urgent measures taken by the ministers of foreign affairs. Secondly, an urgent financial support from the member states through the ISF and the group of the development, the IDB, and through action against fallacious media propaganda. Within the framework of legal convention and statutes adopted by the Islamic meetings and the Council of Foreign Ministers, represents the framework such as to allow the organization to fulfill its action in conformity with the agreements signed by the member states. In this regard, I'd like to renew our call to the member states that have not yet signed or ratified the agreements concluded within the framework of the organization to do so, so that these mechanisms may be established and become operative. In the forefront of this document, I would like to note the charter of the organization, the statute of the organization for women's development, and the Islamic Organization for Food Security that are already operative. But there still are other important institutions that have not seen their statutes entering into force, such as the Labor Center and the Center for Cooperation and Policy Support. Within the framework of reform of the General Secretariat, a study has been elaborated by the Public Administration Institute in collaboration with the General Secretariat. The study has led to the elaboration of an organigram project for the General Secretariat, which are reflected in the annexes of my present report to this August body. The General Secretariat, in implementation of the resolution of the OIC Foreign Ministers Conference, has held expert group meetings to elaborate new rules and regulations and to amend certain procedural rules. The General Secretariat has elaborated a draft resolution to govern the work of the contact group and another one to govern the OIC offices abroad. The members of the committee and the statute and the rules of regulation of the OIC. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the applications for observer status and consultative status are increasing day by day, with the increasing number of requests submitted by the General Secretary, received by the General Secretary from non-member states and international organizations and humanitarian organizations. We are gratified of this interest of these members, and I express the hope that I will have your support to find the appropriate formula for the granting of observer and consultative status for the applications where the requests are submitted by parties that meet the conditions in conformity with the mandate submitted to us by the 47th session and the Council of Foreign Ministers. The Program for Action 2025, as adopted by the former Council, constitutes an optimal framework that brings together the objectives and the activities on vital fields for the member states. Concerted efforts must be put in by all to implement effectively the said program. The program's action must be finalized this year. I invite the member states to kindly submit to CESRIC as soon as possible the statistical necessary data to fulfill this important exercise that will enable us to evaluate the progress of the implementation of the action program for achieving the various objectives that I've just enumerated, and to increase the capacity of the organization to face up to the challenges and help us move forward for the implementation of necessary reforms of our organization and the various organs with the support and commitment of the member states. We also rely on your financial support to the organization and its various organs so that they may implement and ensure the follow-up of all plans and programs as approved by your Highnesses. We are confident that strengthening the role of the organization will support our common action and consecrate the spirit of solidarity between our member states. The General Secretariat continues its efforts with the competent authorities in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the implementation of rules and procedures of the arrears of certain member states, for which the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has taken the initiative to settle their arrears within the OIC, within the framework of this continued assistance to the organization. These arrears represent an obstacle that prevent the organization from fulfilling its duties. These urgent commitments will be covered thanks to these donations, and we call for further support from the member states and the IDB. I wish to underline that the General Secretariat, within the framework of the implementation of recommendations of the Permanent Finance Committee, will work in consultation with the Chairman of the Permanent Finance Committee and Chairman of the Control Office to implement the rules and regulations and the recommendations, and we are actually looking into all the various items to prepare for the budget in a manner that takes into consideration the opening of the budgetary exercise in January and its closure in December, in conformity with the rules, regulations and procedures of the Permanent Finance Committee, CPR, as well as the rules and procedure of the Finance Control Organ. In this context, the General Secretary will spare no efforts to implement the recommendations of the Finance Control Organ issued by the 42nd session to strengthen transparency of the financial action. I should like to underline a proper and equitable geographic representation in the candidacies for posts. We call for efforts to recruit larger representatives of member states that are underrepresented to ensure an equitable geographical representation within the General Secretariat and subsidiary organs. Your Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, the world scene is subject to grave developments due to the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. This crisis could possibly adversely affect the development of our countries, including other world countries. This conflict is likely to affect exports of these two countries that represent over 28% of the world's offers. In this regard, I should like to encourage the member states to go from mere words to actions regarding the food strategy, food security strategies concerning wheat, rice, in order to ensure proper reserves at national, regional levels, and to ensure OIC and the OIC, particularly the contribution to the efforts for peace and stability. The General Secretariat has urged the concerned parties to work for guarantee lasting peace and security and preserve the security of populations. In conclusion, allow me to memory of the efforts put in by the General Secretary of the OIC in the execution of the mission assigned to it, but further documentation, including my report on the activities of the organization, is submitted for your attention, and you will agree with me that the challenges are multiple, and I'm convinced and confident that together we shall be able to contribute to face up to these challenges. May Allah Almighty guide our steps towards the achievement of our objectives, for which we are working for the benefit of the Islamic Ummah and for the achievement of the aspirations of peace, unity, justice, and development in our member states and worldwide. I thank you for your kind attention. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your valuable remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, We will now hear a video message from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
Excellencies, as you gather in Pakistan, I am pleased to send my greetings to the meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Council of Foreign Ministers. The United Nations, the OIC, enjoy a close, decades-long relationship rooted in trust and based on the shared belief in the values of multilateral cooperation, dialogue and solidarity. Across Asia, the Middle East, Africa and beyond, our two organizations have worked together to nurture a culture of peace, tolerance and understanding. In recent years, we have successfully deepened our collaboration on key areas of mutual concern, including mediation, countering terrorism, preventing violent extremism, combating anti-Muslim hatred, and promoting religious tolerance. Today, the imperative to join forces, devise common strategies, and draw on our competitive advantages is more urgent than ever. In my recent report on our common agenda, I have offered proposals guided by the beacon of the Charter to update global governance, better manage risks and threats, and build a safer, more resilient and inclusive world set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Challenges abound, from the war in Ukraine and its global ramifications to growing inequalities and proliferating assaults on human rights. Developing countries, in particular, face crises on so many fronts. Vast inequity is blocking recovery, poverty is deepening, and countries are paralyzed by debt and liquidity issues. We must reform a morally bankrupt global financial system, and we must make sure that all countries have the resources they need to recover from the pandemic, build resilience against climate shocks, and support the Sustainable Development Goals. Only together, in unity, with partners at all levels, can we confront shared challenges and create a better future for all. Thank you.
I now request His Excellency Mr. Muhtar Tilberdi, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, to deliver a statement. He will be speaking on behalf of the Asia Group of the OIC member states.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Minister IMRAN Khan, the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, distinguished Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, distinguished Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Secretary General of OIC, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, on behalf of the Asian Group of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and on behalf of the delegation of Kazakhstan, allow me to express appreciation to the government of Pakistan for the cordial hospitality and excellent arrangement of today's OIC ministerial meeting, titled Partnership for Unity, Justice and Development. I would like to express special gratitude to the OIC General Secretariat for the preparation of this meeting. I also would like to congratulate the Republic of Niger on the successful completion of chairmanship of the 47th session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers. I wish all participants of this meeting a productive work for the prosperity of our Ummah. Dear colleagues, today on global scale, the world is going through a challenging period and undergoing significant changes. Military conflicts, confrontation between the West and the East, the Ukrainian crisis, the consequences of the pandemic, religious intolerance, instability in the financial and commodity markets, all of these have a negative impact on the performance of the global economy and security. We observe the continuation of such trends as multipolarity, economic globalization, informational advancement of society, multiculturalism, and transformation of the system of global governance and world order. The connectivity and interdependence of states is increasing, and we see growing trends of redistribution of the global balance of forces and increasing demand of global community for leadership related to the interest of peaceful and progressive development. Meanwhile, the situation with global and regional security is becoming more and more complicated with each passing day. Challenges and threats are running rampant. The hybrid confrontation is expanding, and fake news has become widespread, inciting ethnic, racial, and religious discord, thus even further exacerbating the regional conflicts. These are followed by entrenching traditions of unilateral approaches to addressing international issues, that is, through the use of force. Such development contributes to growing practices of interference in the internal affairs of other states, infringing of the rights of sovereign advancement, and simultaneously regional international cooperation. This ultimately hinders the progress of humankind and destroys trust as the foundation of stable peace. All these risks and threats are relevant for the Islamic world as well. Today, more than ever, the countries of the Islamic world and the OIC member states need unity and must defend their interest and position to preserve common values and provide all possible support and necessary assistance. And I believe that the subject of today's summit highlights the importance of this idea. Nowadays, Kazakhstan is creating a concept of new Kazakhstan. Recently, President Tokayev announced the large-scale and meaningful reforms which cover almost all areas of life of the country. They include initiatives aimed at political liberalization, plurality, and openness. In the sphere of the economic, the reforms are focused on the tackling monopolization, improving living standards, and ensuring that all citizens feel the benefits of our growing economy. Societal reforms are aimed at improving health and education of the nation as well as other sectors. Kazakhstan today fully supports international efforts to ensure regional security and sustainable development of the countries of Eurasia. The ongoing global and regional processes require collective decision regarding resolute reunification of wars, conflicts, confrontation, and choosing the path of peace, dialogue, and focusing on joint development. Against this backdrop, as an intergovernmental forum that brings together 27 member states, 9 observers, and more than half of the world population, with the established political dialogue, Conference on Interaction, and confidence-building measures in Asia, has a potential to become an effective tool for joint confrontation of new challenges and ensuring security and stability in the region. The key priority of Kazakhstan chairmanship at the SICA process is the transformation of the conference into a full-fledged international organization. Conversion into an international organization will significantly expand the capacity of the SICA and increase array of tools for practical cooperation between its member states. Within its chairmanship, Kazakhstan will hold the 6th SICA summit in Nur-Sultan on the 12th and 13th of November this year, which marks the 30th anniversary of the conference. This event aims to propel the SICA into a new level institutional development. At the initiative of Kazakhstan, the Code of Conduct towards achieving the world free of terrorism was developed within the UN and opened for signature in 2018. It has now been signed by 89 countries. Since 2017, our decision regarding 17 rounds of the Astana process talks on Syria aimed at confrontation and choosing the path of international dialogue and focusing on joint development conflict. Against this backdrop, as intergovernmental forum that brings together 27 member states, 9 observers, and more than half of the world population, with the established political dialogue, Conference on Interaction, and confidence-building measures in Asia has the potential to become an effective tool for joint confrontation of new challenges and ensuring security and stability in the region. The key priority of Kazakhstan chairmanship at the SICA process is is the transformation of the conference into a full-fledged international organization.
In 2020,
into an international organization will significantly expand the capacity of the SICA
Central Asia and
increase
in promoting the sustainable development
practical
goals.
cooperation between its member
opening in Almaty
states.
city of
Within
the temporary
its
remote
chairmanship,
office of
Kazakhstan will hold the 6th SICA summit in Nur-Sultan on the 12th and 13th of November this year, which marks the 30th anniversary of the conference. This event aims to propel the SICA into a new level of institutional development. At the initiative of Kazakhstan, the Code of Conduct towards achieving the world free of terrorism was developed within the UN and opened for signature in 2018. It has now been signed by 89 countries. Since 2017, the decision regarding the 70 review of the Armenian process and the establishment of Syria, confrontation and choosing the path of this dialogue and focusing on joint problem in this regard. Against this, the OIC Secretariat is concerned brings together 27 member states, 9 observers, economic and financial initiative program, and the OIC member states to make large-scale conference interactions and confidence building consideration in its potential to become an effective tool for Syria and several African states have become a matter of stability in the region. We believe that the initiative of the Islamic process to train the transformation of the conference into a full-fledged international organization. In 2020, into an international organization will significantly establish the capacity of the SICA Central Asia and increase in promoting the sustainable practical cooperation between its members and Almaty city. Within temporary chairmanship, Kazakhstan will hold the 6th SICA summit in Nur-Sultan on the 12th and 13th of November this year, which marks the 30th anniversary of the conference. This event unites the extraordinary SICA into a new level of social development. Promoting the ideology of Kazakhstan, mutual understanding and towards achieving the goal free of terrorism was developed within the UN and opened for signature in 2018. It has now been signed by Congress of 89 countries. Since 2017, which has been held in Kazakhstan since 2003, and is attended by the leaders of the Islamic world and the Secretary General of the OIC. The next 6th Congress will be held in September 2022 in Kazakhstan. Distinguished participants, in the face of the new challenges, the transformation of the organization is an important issue, and therefore we need to swiftly conclude the process of reforming the OIC. In this context, we are grateful to Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Bangladesh for their efforts and contribution for the holding of 2 extraordinary meetings on comprehensive reform of our organization. The combat against the COVID-19 pandemic and overcoming its consequences are still among the pressing issues of our cooperation agenda. At the current stage, I would like to emphasize the importance of uniting our efforts in the combat against the pandemic and the exchange of vaccines. In addition, Kazakhstan, within its activity in the UN, initiated the establishment of the International Agenda for Biological Safety, which in future will contribute to the prevention of biological threats and the exchange of the information and dangerous diseases. Comprehensive support for this initiative will allow our countries to achieve timely measures in the future. And the pandemic, more than anything else, showed the urgent need for the development of science and technology in the Muslim world and beyond. At the first OIC Summit on Science and Technology held in September 2017 in Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan initiated the establishment of the OIC 15 Group, which unites 15 leading Muslim countries in the field of science and technology to promote the potential of our humanity in these areas. This year, Kazakhstan intends to hold the meeting of ministers of the OIC 15 Group member states responsible for education, science and technology. This step would also again demonstrate the need to consolidate efforts in the development of our own advanced science and technology as an important factor in achieving peace and prosperity. Distinguished colleagues, today many countries, including the Islamic world, are facing acute issue of ensuring food security due to the complex of geopolitical situation in the world and climate change. Many countries in Africa and Middle East are sounding the alarm and are requesting our help in providing essential products. Some countries are experiencing famine due to the prompt failures last year. We are ready to cooperate in this area and consider it important to revitalize the Islamic Organization for Food Security and to use its potential to ensure access to food supply for countries in need. To date, 36 of the 56 OIC countries have joined this organization, and only 17 countries have ratified its charter. We call on the members of the OIC to actively engage in the activities of the International Organization for Food Security. Last but not least, I invite distinguished delegations to support the resolution on granting the Organization of Turkic States the observer status in the OIC, which will be discussed this afternoon in the special committee. As a founding members of this organization, Kazakhstan is interested to enhance cooperation with important international organizations such as OIC, and we believe that strong partnership between OIC and different Asian regional organizations will increase the Islamic solidarity in the international arena and also a new avenue of cooperation. Availing this opportunity, I would like to inform that recently, on the 12th March this year, there was the early presidential election in the Turkmenistan, which, according to the international observers, was held in a fair, free and competitive atmosphere. As a result of the election, His Excellency Mr. Serdar Mohamedov, with the support of 73% of the electorate, has become a new resident of Turkmenistan. Also, I will this opportunity to express on behalf of the Asian group the heartfelt congratulations to the government and the people of Pakistan on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of independence of the Republic. And I wish peace and prosperity to the brotherly people of Pakistan. In conclusion, allow me to express the hope that all OIC will continue to advance its goals and objectives for the benefit of the entire Muslim Ummah. I wish all participants to today's event, and thank you for your attention. As a founding member of this organization, Kazakhstan is interested to enhance cooperation.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your insightful remarks. I now request His Excellency Mr. Otman Jarandi, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Tunisia, to make his speech. He will be speaking on behalf of the Arab Group of the OIC states.
Availing this opportunity, I would like to inform that recently, on the 12th March this year, there was the early presidential election in the Turkmenistan, which, according to the international observers, was held in a fair, free and competitive atmosphere. As a result of the election, His Excellency Mr. Serdar Mohamedov, with the support of 73% of the electorate, has become a new resident of Turkmenistan. Also, I will this opportunity to express on behalf of the Asian group the heartfelt congratulations to the government and the people of Pakistan.
Mr. IMRAN Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Excellency Shah Mahmoud Qureshi, Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, we congratulate you on your chairmanship of this session and for the celebration of your Independence Day. Highnesses, Excellencies, Excellency Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Secretary General of the OIC, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Arab Group, I'm pleased to extend my greetings to Shah Mahmoud Qureshi, Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, for the efforts deployed to consolidate joint Islamic action. I also extend my thanks to the Republic of Niger for its excellent chairmanship of the previous session of our Council. I seize this opportunity to hail the efforts made by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the chair of the Islamic Summit. I extend my thanks to Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, OIC Secretary General, for providing support to Arab states to building partnerships reaffirms our need as an Islamic group more than ever, our need for having a joint confrontation of the challenges that we are facing as a result of the serious, rapid changes in the world and the need to contain them in order to promote peace and security in the world and in our Islamic and Arab region in particular. Our organization has a weight and needs a joint position in order to address the various international and regional issues on the basis of the principles and the values that bring us together and which we share.
The Islamic Republic
require an urgent solution to all the causes on the basis of the same international standards. The Arab group reiterates the need to identify a political settlement to all the crises witnessed in our region and to make our voice heard and defend our causes in the international arena.
This of the OIC, ladies and gentlemen,
deal with all the attempts that aim to destabilize our countries. The joint ties between us and our commitment to the values of justice require that we need to fulfill our responsibility to the Palestinian people to end the daily Israeli violation of the rights of Palestinians and the promotion of the settlement policies that will reduce the possibility of peace and reduce tension in the region. The Palestinian cause is at the forefront of our concerns. We call for resumption of the peace process and the settlement of the issue on the basis of international resolutions and on the basis of the Arab and Islamic position. The same applies to Jammu Kashmir. Here, we need to implement all the international resolutions. It is a just cause, and there is no doubt about that. The same applies to Yemen, and here we call on Yemen to go for a dialogue to settle the issue. We thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the valuable efforts in this regard. Terrorism and violent extremism are a common enemy that destabilize our countries. This requires further vigilance and more effective coordination and cooperation in order to use the preventive measures and to adopt new approaches to face this scourge and the transborder urgent solution to crime such as incarceration and trafficking in humans. On the other hand, we need to adopt modern digital communication means to face Islamophobia and the discourse of hatred and extremism. And we need to work together to promote the discourse of tolerance and acceptance of the other. We need the cooperation among the various partners to convince others about the just cause of our causes and to promote the values of justice on the basis of the peaceful cohabitation between peoples. Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, reinforcing the peace and security in our Islamic region in the face of the exceptional challenges such as COVID-19, and in order to be able to deal with the Ukrainian issue, all of this requires further partnership at the economic and developmental levels, and our Arab financial institutions need to make more contributions, and the same applies to specialized organizations working in this area. The aim is to achieve the set objectives to promote trade in the Islamic world and to activate tourism, and we need further initiatives to promote our economies such as the OIC investment initiative. In this, we rely on the cooperation between the private and public sectors in order to benefit from our abilities as men and women, and the use of all the available resources to promote innovation in the various critical enable us to be part of the world economy. Mr. Chairman, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our determination is first to contribute to a modern reformist policy of our organization that will enable us to upgrade its role in order to consolidate cooperation among member states. The aim is to achieve more dynamism in the various three parts of the organization in its economic, political and development role. We believe that the challenges we are facing at the moment require consolidating cooperation and consultation of the OIC and the League of Arab States and to open up to other organizations in our region with a view to mobilizing more support to our causes in the international arena on the basis of the principles of the UN Charter and co-living with a view to a world that is more just and prosperous. May Allah make us succeed in our endeavor. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency, for your inspiring statement. I now request His Excellency, Mr. Zubair Dada, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Nigeria, to make his speech. He will speak on behalf of the Africa Group of the OIC member states.
To promote our economies such as the OIC investment initiative. In this, we rely on cooperation between the private and public sectors in order to benefit from our abilities as men and women and the use of all the available resources to promote innovation in the various critical sectors that Mr. Chairman, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
Your Excellency, Mr. Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Your Excellency, Maktoum Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and Chairman of this session, Your Royal Highness, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellency Ambassador Hussein Ibrahim Taha, the Secretary General, distinguished delegates and other invited guests, gentlemen of the press, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is for me indeed a great honor and privilege to speak today on behalf of the African Group on the occasion of the 48th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, holding in this beautiful city of Islamabad. We are indeed humbled by this singular honor. Let me at the outset convey the sincere appreciation of my delegation and that of the entire African Group to the government and the people of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for the warm reception and generous hospitality. And we also thank them for the excellent facilities that have been put at our disposal for the success of our meeting. We wish to congratulate the good people of Pakistan on the celebration of the 75th anniversary of independence of Pakistan. We wish you more peace and prosperity. Permit me also to congratulate you, Mr. Chairman, for your unanimous election to steer the proceedings of this session. And in the same vein, I wish to commend the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Brotherly Republic, Your Excellency, for the numerous accomplishments during his chairmanship of the previous session. Your Excellency, I further take this opportunity to welcome on board our new Secretary General, Ambassador Taha, and to assure him of our full support and and successful tenure at the helms of our common organization. Honourable Ministers, distinguished delegates, the 48th session of AFRAN is taking place at a crucial moment in the history of our organization. The huge socio-economic and humanitarian challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with the rising wave of political and security crises in parts of our member states, call for our concerted efforts and joint action for durable solutions. It is obvious that our immediate preoccupation should be directed towards fashioning and implementing a robust post-COVID-19 recovery plan to respond to the needs of our people. And to this end, we reiterate our support for the commendable endeavors of the OIC aimed at addressing the various conflict situations and flashpoints, particularly in Africa. The menace of terrorism, insurgency, banditry, small arms and light weapons, human and drug trafficking have continued to militate against the peace, security, stability, human rights, social cohesion, and indeed the economic development of the entire African region. And this is why we welcome the choice of the theme of this session, which is Partnership for Unity, Justice, and Development, which we consider very apt and indeed very relevant. We believe that the 48th session will do justice not only to the numerous issues on this agenda, but also adopt appropriate and implementable resolutions to address our common and pressing challenges and fast-track recovery in our member states from the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Chairman, for the past 12 years, Nigeria and indeed the Lake Chad Basin countries have continued to suffer from brutal acts of terrorism led by Boko Haram and lately ISWAP. The activities of these enemies of peace, unity and progress and development have created a very serious humanitarian crisis in our region. In Nigeria alone, we have over 3 million people that are displaced and are living in IDP camps. In Burkina Faso, we have about 2 million people that are also living in IDP camps. The OIC must not abandon these people. They are in dire need of your assistance, and that is why Nigeria has proposed a new draft resolution on this subject for your kind consideration and adoption. And we hope that the OIC will extend its full solidarity to these people with a view to alleviating their plight. Furthermore, a robust implementation of the relevant OIC resolutions on combating the Boko Haram and other terrorist groups in West and Central Africa, and indeed some parts of Southern Africa, and support for the operations of the G5 Sahel Joint Force will significantly assist the ongoing national and sub-regional efforts towards addressing these lingering security problems in our sub-region. This measure would, if of necessity, also include the comprehensive review and execution of the OIC Code of Conduct on Combating International Terrorism, 1994, and the OIC Convention on Combating Terrorism. We further urge for concrete collaboration and partnership with the national agencies of the member states, including the Saudi-led Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition, in order to stamp out this menace that is facing our countries. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, beyond the active measures needed to counter terrorism in our region, the mobilization of funds for the various national social and humanitarian actions are crucial to the rehabilitation and radicalization efforts in the affected countries. Equally significant is the need to address the economic root causes of insecurity in the African region. In this regard, the implementation of the OIC resolution on the recharge of the Lake Chad which has lost over 80% of its water, would contribute to the restoration of the various communities in the Lake Chad Basin and return millions of people to their lost livelihoods. Similarly, it is our conviction that the agenda of OIC on peace and security can best succeed if we establish meaningful partnership with the United Nations, the African Union, and other sub-regional groupings in Africa on conflict prevention, conciliation, mediation, and peace building, as well as the promotion of good governance and democracy. And closely related to this is the need for granting debt remission and relief for our countries, especially the least developed countries that represent more than 1/3 of the OIC membership. Mr. Chairman, poverty remains one of the major challenges confronting Africa, and the pandemic has sadly further aggravated the situation. To create a better and more sustainable future for our people, strengthening intra-OIC cooperation to harness the enormous resources and potentials within our member states is key and essential. Equally vital is the need to boost intra-OIC trade and commercial exchanges as a bedrock for our economic cooperation and a means to further enhance South-South cooperation. We regret to note the drastic decline in the volume of intra-OIC trade, reported from 700.1 billion in 2019 to just 552.8 billion in 2020, amounting to about 21.2% decline. We applaud and encourage OIC efforts in capacity building and skills acquisition development, as well as the promotion of research and innovation, especially in the areas of agriculture and food security. In this regard, we support the adoption of the OIC Plan of Action on the development of strategic agricultural commodities and underscore our commitment to play a central role in the implementation of programs on wheat, rice, and cassava as part of our endeavor to promote agricultural cooperation. Already in Nigeria, the central bank-supported Anko Borrower's program has produced the desired result, as we have drastically cut rice importation and have attained the first position in rice production in Africa. Your Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, as we commend the OIC for its sustained interest in Africa through the various IDB initiatives, which include the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, the Islamic Development Fund, and the Special Program for the Development of Africa, we call for additional mobilization of resources in order to achieve the target capitals of these funds and programs. And we also reiterate the importance of the Dakar-Port Sudan rail project and the need to accord it the due attention it deserves because of its enormous economic impact on the continent. Mr. Chairman, before I close, let me reaffirm on behalf of the African Group our full solidarity with the people of Palestine, as I also restate our support for the cause of Jammu and Kashmir people. We commend the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for its sustained commitment to the ideals of the OIC and pledge our support to its chairmanship. We also wish the 48th session of the Conference of Foreign Ministers very fruitful deliberations. I thank you for your very, very kind attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Excellency, for very valid observations. I now invite President, Islamic Development Bank, His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Salman Al-Jasser for his statement.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, peace and blessings be upon our noble Prophet Muhammad and his kin and companions and his followers till the end of day. Your Excellency,
Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the OIC Summit Chair. Your Excellency Mr. Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Your Excellency Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Excellencies, representatives of the OIC member states and representatives of all other countries, distinguished representatives of the fellow multilateral banks and UN agencies, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me to begin by expressing my utmost appreciation to this esteemed session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers for designating building partnerships for unity, justice, and development as its theme, which is most pertinent. We cannot overemphasize the importance of partnerships for realizing our vision of prosperity, development, and solidarity. As an institution committed to sustainable development, the Islamic Development Bank recognizes that partnerships are the key enablers for socio-economic advancement. To continue to respond to evolving development needs, the Islamic Development Bank is firmly committed to supporting green, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure, the foundation for higher productivity and growth. The Islamic Development Bank is also investing in inclusive human capital development and social infrastructure through investment in health, education, nutrition, and job creation. For the bank, solidarity means strengthening partnerships and cooperation among the member countries in all possible areas to enhance their collective economic development. To achieve this goal, the bank has introduced new modalities and initiatives to strengthen economic linkages among its member countries. The programs under IDB's regional cooperation and integration, supported by our private sector group entities, aim to scale up regional integration projects, intra-OIC trade and investment levels through cross-border projects and trade corridors. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the establishment of the Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund is a strong message of solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. The 17th extraordinary meeting of the OIC Foreign Ministers, held in this great city on December 19, 2021, asked the Islamic Development Bank to establish, operationalize, and manage the fund to channel humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan in partnership with other international and regional stakeholders. I am pleased to update that the charter has been signed with the OIC. This is the first but very pivotal step that will pave the way for operationalization of the fund. The IDB is strongly committed to ensuring strict policies and guidelines to govern all of the fund's activities. Accordingly, we guarantee utmost transparency in all aspects of the fund's activities and adherence to the relevant international standards and best practices. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, given the gravity of the challenges facing Afghanistan today, no single entity or institution can tackle them alone. Instead, there is a consensus that the international community needs to collectively provide a holistic, practical, sustainable, and comprehensive solution, learning from the lessons of the past and leveraging the strengths of all stakeholders to address these daunting challenges. Since last December, the Bank has had continuous coordination and consultations with the OIC, development partners, humanitarian organizations, and donors. We have also consulted with countries interested in supporting the Afghani people. We are committed to benefiting from all relevant experiences and exploring potential cooperation opportunities to ensure formulation of an impactful partnership to undertake collective efforts to achieve the fund's objectives. Since 76% of the Afghanistan population lives in rural areas, a primary focus of the fund will be to save lives by preserving rural livelihoods. An integrated, holistic approach is proposed to be adopted to ensure that the fund's limited resources are deployed most effectively to yield maximum developmental impact. We are also keen to leverage local community development councils, especially in rural communities, to design and implement various initiatives under the fund to enhance local ownership. We are committed to working with all our partners to break the prevalent vicious cycle of poverty and initiate a virtuous cycle of hope and self-reliance in the country. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, depending on the fund's funding amounts and possible replenishments, a comprehensive phased approach will be adopted to promote long-term peace and stability. This can be achieved by enhancing agricultural productivity to promote food security, ensuring access to quality education, especially for females, provisioning of health care facilities in rural communities, women and youth empowerment, as well as facilitating rural electrification. The fund, in close coordination with our partners, is also actively exploring potential opportunities to leverage the private sector to support the humanitarian efforts, especially by focusing on creating meaningful employment opportunities in agro-business through supporting micro and small-medium enterprises. The Islamic Development Bank is also ideally positioned to provide the necessary platforms for neighboring and regional member countries to play a positive role by optimally leveraging the IDB's South-South cooperation program. Benefiting from the experience, expertise, and knowledge of several OIC and Islamic Development Bank member countries, the Islamic Development Bank, under the overall umbrella of the fund, is keen to facilitate the capacity building in key sectors such as banking and finance, medicine, and agriculture. We expect Islamic finance, particularly Islamic social finance instruments such as zakat, to play an essential role in facilitating resource mobilization and successful delivery of the programs. We look forward to the generous support of all OIC countries, international, regional, and bilateral organizations, the private sector, and philanthropists. The success of this fund will not be of credit to a single individual, entity, or institution, but to all of humanity. I reiterate the Islamic Development Bank's continued commitment to work closely with our partners and the international community to fully synchronize all efforts to ensure we collectively deliver sustainable support to Afghanistan, fostering resilience and self-reliance. Excellencies, distinguished guests, I take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the OIC Special Envoy for all their efforts to promote the Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund globally. I would also like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for this vital initiative whereby we take the lead in helping our fellow Muslims. Special thanks go to Nigeria for being the first country to make a pledge. We are confident other countries and donors will follow suit. I also extend my special thanks to the government of Pakistan for its generosity and hospitality, and also congratulate the people and the government of Pakistan on the occasion of this 75th anniversary of independence. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your statement. We are moving closer to the closure of the inaugural session. May I request Excellencies to take your seats, and I'd like to see the House in order before I invite our special guest to come to the rostrum for his statement. Please take your seats. People standing at the back, I would request you to please take your seats. Thank you. Excellencies, today we have with us His Excellency Mr. Wang Yi, State Councillor, Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of China, as a special guest. I now request him to come to the rostrum for his statement. State Councillor Wang Yi.
尊敬的伊姆兰汗总理，尊敬的库里希外长、塔哈秘书长，各位同事、各位兄弟、各位好朋友，非常高兴应邀出席伊斯兰合作组织外长会的开幕式，并有机会发表致辞。这是中国外长首次参加伊斯兰合作组织的外长会，充分体现了中国同伊斯兰世界加强交流合作的真诚愿望，必将推动我们的双方关系迈上新的台阶。中华文明同伊斯兰文明都是世界上有重要影响的古老文明，双方的交往绵延千年，历经国际风云变幻的考验，有着深厚的历史底蕴和坚实的民意基础。友好始终是双方关系的主流。
Equality is always the foundation of our interaction, and mutual benefit is always the goal of our cooperation. Over the years, we are always committed to mutual respect and trust and support each other's core concerns. China will never forget
把中国抬进了联合国。同样，在伊斯兰世界最为关注的巴勒斯坦问题上，中国的支持从未犹豫，从未缺席。我们始终坚持团结互助，致力发展，实现共同发展。疫情爆发后，伊斯兰国家第一时间给予中国宝贵的支持，中国也及时向50个伊斯兰国家提供了13亿剂疫苗以及大量的抗疫物资。共建“一带一路”已经成为双方走向发展繁荣的桥梁和纽带。中国迄今已经同54个伊斯兰国家签署了合作文件，开展了将近600个大型的合作项目，资金投资的总额达到了4000亿美元，给双方人民带来了实实在在的利益。我们始终坚持互学互鉴，守护世界的多样文明。中华文明和伊斯兰文明历史上都对人类文明做出过重大的贡献，而近代以来， 我们也都受到了不公正的对待。现在我们正携手迈上发展复兴之路，我们要大力倡导文明平等对话、交流互鉴，从彼此的悠久文明中汲取智慧，共同抵制文明歧视，共同反对文明冲突。应该说，中国和伊斯兰世界已经找到了一条不同文明友好相处、合作共赢的道路，成为践行新型国际关系的典范，对不同国家、不同文明之间如何交往提供了有益的经验。各位同事、各位朋友，面对动荡变革的世界，本届伊核组织外长会聚焦结伴实现团结、公正、发展这一主题，反映了世界上大多数国家的共同心声。中方愿意同一方一道，倡导真正的多边主义，捍卫联合国宪章的宗旨原则，维护以联合国为核心的国际体系，在追求民族复兴的道路上风雨同舟，携手同行。中国愿意同伊斯兰世界建设4个伙伴关系：一是做团结协作的伙伴，相互坚定支持彼此捍卫国家的主权、独立和领土完整，坚定支持彼此独立自主地探索符合本国国情的发展道路，坚定支持彼此维护自身的正当发展权益和广大发展中国家的共同利益。二是做发展振兴的伙伴，继续团结抗疫。下阶段，中方将继续向伊斯兰国家提供3亿剂疫苗，助力各国构筑健康防线。我们将继续加强发展战略对接，以高质量共建“一带一路”和携手落实全球发展倡议为双引擎，巩固传统合作，培育新兴亮点，助力中伊发展振兴，引领南南合作潮流，为实现联合国2030年可持续发展议程注入强劲动力。三是做安全稳定的伙伴，中方将继续支持伊斯兰国家运用伊斯兰的智慧解决当前的热点问题，把维稳促和的钥匙牢牢掌握在自己的手中。中方将继续坚定站在巴勒斯坦人民一边，支持在两国方案基础上推动早日召开更具权威性和代表性的国际和会，促进巴勒斯坦问题的全面公正解决。中方将尊重阿富汗人民自己做出的选择，支持阿富汗实现包容建政、稳健治理，开启和平重建新的篇章。在克什米尔问题上，我们今天再次听到了很多伊斯兰朋友的呼声。中方和大家一样，我们抱有同样的愿望。中方也支持俄罗斯和乌克兰继续和谈，谈出停火，谈出止战，谈出和平。要防止发生人道主义灾难，要避免乌克兰危机外溢影响和损害其他地区和国家的正当权益。四是做文明互鉴的伙伴，共同弘扬和平、发展、公平、正义、民主、自由的全人类共同价值，反对意识形态划线，制造分裂对抗，坚持不同文明交流互鉴，反对文明优越论，反对 文明冲突论，反对对非西方文明的歪曲和抹黑，深化预防性反恐和去极端化的合作，抵制反恐的双重标准，反对将恐怖主义同特定的民族宗教挂钩。各位同事，历史已经证明，并将继续证明，中国是伊斯兰世界的真诚朋友和合作伙伴。我们愿意同伊斯兰国家一道，共同促进世界格局多极化、国际关系民主化、人类文明多样化，为构建人类命运共同体而不懈努力。最后，再次感谢巴基斯坦成功主办今天的外展会，也对巴基斯坦的国庆日表示我们最衷心的祝贺。预祝会议圆满成功，谢谢各位。
Thank you, Excellency, for your insightful remarks. We are grateful indeed for your gracious presence. I now request His Excellency, Mr. Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, to make his keynote address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, Thy aid do we seek and Thy do we worship.
Foreign Minister, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Honorable Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, Royal Highnesses, Honorable Foreign Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome you with great joy and happiness on this 48th Foreign Ministers OIC meeting. And it's being held in Islamabad at a time when we are celebrating our 75th anniversary of our independence. So I want to warmly welcome you. I hope you have a great stay here. And from the people of Pakistan, they are overjoyed that all of you are here and on this special occasion. Today I want to especially congratulate our OIC members because of a landmark resolution passed in the United Nations declaring 15th March as a day to combat Islamophobia. But I want to remind people why 15th of March. 15th of March was a day when a gunman walked into a mosque in New Zealand and shot dead 50 people. Why did he shoot them? Because he felt that all Muslims were terrorists. Where did this Islamophobia grow and was allowed to keep growing? After 9/11. What happened after 9/11? Unfortunately, this narrative of Islamic terrorism, Islamic radicalism, this narrative went on unchecked. Respected foreign ministers, I have spent a lot of my life in England, touring all over the world as an international sportsman. And I understand the Western civilization probably much better than most people. I went to university there and then used to spend half my here playing sports in the summer in England. Now, I saw this growing. After 9/11, this Islamophobia kept growing. And the reason was, I'm sorry to say, that we, the Muslim countries, did not do anything to check this wrong narrative. How can any religion have anything to do with terrorism? How was Islam equated with terrorism? And once that happens, how is the man in the street in Western countries, how is he supposed to differentiate between a moderate Muslim and a radical Muslim? How can he differentiate? Hence, this man walks into a mosque and shoots everyone he could. Unfortunately, what should have been done and wasn't, the heads of Muslim countries should have taken a stand on this. But instead, a lot of heads of state kept saying things like, well, we are moderate. The moment you say you're a moderate Muslim, you automatically say that there is some extreme form of Islam. Our head of state at the time, after 9/11, he coined a phrase called enlightened moderation. I understand English better than most. I still don't know what it means. Enlightened moderation was a term to appease those who were relating terrorism to Islam. And unfortunately, as a result, there was this perception that there are different types of Islam. There's some radical Islam, there's some moderate, there's some liberal Islam. There is only one Islam, Islam of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no other Islam. In human communities, in every human community, you have your moderates, you have your liberals, you have your conservatives, you have your fanatics. Every human community has that. The man who walked into the mosque in New Zealand clearly was not a normal person. So, but why no other human community was branded with their religion? 1.5 billion people branded by these terms. And there always should be self-criticism, because that's how you improve. Unless you analyze your mistakes, you can't improve yourself. So that was the biggest mistake we made. We did not challenge this narrative. And guess who suffered? Muslims living in Western countries. They kept suffering, because any incident would happen, any terrorist incident by a Muslim immediately meant that every Muslim became branded. When 9/11 happened, I still remember, people were petrified in Pakistan that I hope there was no Pakistani involved. How could how could whole community be responsible for some fanatical deed by some extremists? So therefore, this was it was one of the worst periods for Muslims living in non-Muslim countries. And then in 1989, there was a book called Satanic Verses.